Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Curated Caregiver. And I'm Donna Jackson, the Adult Caregivers Coach. And we are here again with our final segment in our talk with Janet Melvin. She is an expert in, among other things, the neurodivergence that shows up in clients who she supports and advocates for. Our segment today is called Beyond the Spectrum of Care, when the neurodivergent care for each other. And with that, welcome back, Janet.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I am a nurse practitioner. I've been one for over 10 years and lots of experience dealing with neurodivergence on both the mental health side as well as just primary care in the medical side of things. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Don. Appreciate you.
Yes. So listen, when we last spoke, we were talking about, and we launched into this discussion about, how caregivers who themselves are neurodivergent, how they come to this season and what that looks like, what the support looks like, what the advocacy looks like, how you support folks on this neurodivergent spectrum. And, we left the discussion with how they can be empowered even in that space. So today we want to kind of wrap it up with what it looks like when the person being cared for or that elderly loved one is neurodivergent, not necessarily the caregiver. And then we're going to shift into, well, then what happens if both happen to be in some capacity on that neurodivergent spectrum, and how can we address their needs very specifically, and then even generally? What are some of the things that you've seen when we're talking about this situation from this perspective, that the person being cared for is the neurodivergent person in the caregiving scenario?
That is a great question. When you're caring for an elderly loved one, or a loved one in general, or maybe they're not elderly, they could even just be, your child is neurodivergent, your teenager, your spouse even is neurodivergent, and just providing care for them. I think one of the first things we need to do is make sure we are informing ourselves or educating ourselves about what does this neurodivergent mean? What does this look like? Because from person to person, there may be some things that are consistent that you see in all of them, but it's a spectrum. So no two people are going to look exactly the same. So understanding that there is a way you have to communicate with them, maybe breaking down tasks for them, or even just allowing for breaks in a day, so that it gives them something to understand, or at least be able to realize that, okay, the care being given to this person who's neurodivergent, we're trying to do our best to make that care person-centered. In the healthcare world, patient-centered or person-centered, because like I said, no two people look the same. So their needs may not always be the same. And so I think first and foremost, we need to educate ourselves on what does that really mean? Neurodivergence, in the first podcast, we talked about what is neurodivergence. And basically what that is in a nutshell is someone who thinks and maybe acts in non-traditional ways of learning and seeing their environment. Not neurodivergence can encompass, but is not limited to people who have ADHD, people who have autism, people who have disorders like Fragile X, which looks a little bit like autism, but not exactly, just or people who have Down syndrome. The way they interpret sensory input, communication, socialization looks different to them than the average person. And so when you're providing care to that individual, it is good to have at least a good understanding or a foundation of how their brain might work and interpret information.
Mm-hmm. No, that's excellent. A couple of things came to mind when you were speaking. Two things, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, are what if this person has never been officially diagnosed? Do you think that when you actually recognize it, which may be, later on, or even if they have never been officially diagnosed, when it comes to this season now, though, where the dynamic is changed in that relationship, right? So now you have to care for them. And do you think it's helpful to get them officially diagnosed? And then the second part of that is, go ahead. No, let you jump in there.
Oh, no, I was trying to listen. When you have a patient, I speak in terms of patients because I deal in patients, but when you're caring for a loved one that has never been diagnosed, but you suspect it, let's say the symptoms of what you're seeing, for example, they don't remember things. Their memory, like you just told them this and they still don't remember it 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, they don't remember. They get easily distracted. They can be really impulsive in their behavior or decision making, forgetful, or just they don't know how to prioritize things. When you have a person like that you're caring for in your life that may have never been diagnosed, but you suspect the symptoms, it is helpful to get them diagnosed. Yes, because there's treatment for that. Okay. Often, I get a lot of adults who likely had ADHD when they were kids, but it got missed, it got overlooked because, especially in a lot of our minority cultures, or particularly in Black cultures, we, 20, 30 years ago, if your child was just hyperactive and all over the place and impulsive, there was, of course, this idea that they just need more structure and, y'all need to sit down and listen. So there was just a little bit more of rigidity around the idea that maybe this person really has some form of neurodivergence. And that's why they're behaving in the way that they're behaving. When you get older, okay, I may not be as hyper or impulsive like I was as a child, but I make erratic choices. I don't organize. I procrastinate on everything. You're at work, you have certain things you need to get done, and it takes you 3 hours to do a task that really should only take you 30 minutes. You get to college. I see this even in our college kids, where you have assignments due. You wait to 12:55 and know the assignment is due at 11:59. So last minute, because they're just, their brains don't prioritize and organize in that way. So getting evaluated, I think, is important because you're trying to get to a place in life where you have more regulation and control over things instead of letting your life control you. I'm trying to say it simply. Yeah.
Yeah. And so have you seen any instances where people are resistant to getting, so someone recognizes it, especially a caregiver, says, oh, wow, there might be something else going on here that we might need to look into. Have you seen that there's a lot of resistance on the part of the neurodivergent person to say, no, I don't want that. And what does that look like? And how can a caregiver approach them in a way that, can coax them into, well, this is probably best, and things like that?
Yeah, if you have a person who is reluctant or apprehensive about seeking evaluation or even treatment, I would then encourage you to say, okay, well then let's look at some strategies to help you and the patient you're caring for. Because the most frustrating thing in the world is to see that you need help and support in an area, but the person that needs the help and support doesn't want to do it. Yeah. It's that old saying, adage, I can lead a horse to the water, but I can't make him drink it. And so we have a lot of people in our lives that we probably can think of right off the top of our head, that they're just going to be resistant no matter what. Yeah. So when you have that, then you have to become really strategic, I think, lovingly and caringly be able to say, okay, if we're not going to do this way, here are some things that maybe we need to consider so that we make life and caring for you more reasonable without causing undue frustration and anxiety for the person providing the care to the person who is neurodivergent. So we have to come up with strategies for how do we best help you then if we're not going to seek treatment.
Yeah. No, absolutely. In the normal course of caregiving, it is like crucially important that we develop and devise structure and routines, right? That's just even if neurodivergence isn't a part of it. How much more is structure and, daily routines and consistency? How much does that play into this? And with a person who is neurodivergent, are we able to keep them on a structured routine?
That is a good question. And I will answer that in two ways, personally and then like maybe professionally. So personally, I have a son who is autistic. And so giving him a structure and a routine every day is important. Because when there is a deviation from that structure, it causes more emotional unrest for him. And so to the best of our ability, we try to ensure that he has a set routine every day. When there is something new or there's going to be a change in that routine, you have to plan. You have to, or rather, I have to let him know that what that change or that shift is going to be at least a week ahead of time. Sometimes I can do it within a day or two. He's, learned to adapt and adjust a little bit, but often we have to give him lead time because he has to make that shift or connection in his head, and it takes him time to do that. So from a personal experience, I've learned that you have to provide that structure. Now, in saying that, does that mean that life is going to run that way all the time? Not at all. Life happens. There's no way to control, everything in life and to plan everything. I mean, we'd love to be able to say that we can, but, people get sick, cars break down, you have, emergencies that come up that disrupt your normal structure and order of daily life. You just take those things as they come and do your best to stay calm and continue to communicate, and then revise structure where you can, so that individual you're caring for can pivot. It might take them a little bit longer in the pivot. So you have to, and I'm talking about me as a parent of a child who's neurodivergent, when something like that happens, I have to ask for a little extra grace and patience in those moments, because I know for him, it's going to be a little bit of a rough patch, just him transitioning with that. From a professional standpoint, when you have, providing that structure, yes, where you can provide structure and give a set routine.
Mm-hmm.
So in the case of an elderly patient, for example, this is when breakfast is. This is when we go out to doctor's appointments. This is when you have quiet time. This is when lunch or dinner is. Providing like a structure for them is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So they learn to anticipate, like, these are the normal things in my life that are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was really thorough and thoughtful in how to approach it. I'm thinking, and you touched on it, and when life is happening, right? Just things are not going as planned, which is a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what are some of the strategic tips and tactics that you can provide to our caregivers who they may not have been privy to this neurodivergence? Like they might not even know that it exists until now they enter into this space of caregiving, right? So let's think of maybe a granddaughter needs to begin caring for her grandmother. And they weren't in the same household. She didn't raise her, those types of things. But now she's needing to do that. So now she has, and during the holidays and the times when she's around her grandmother, everybody's stimulated. It's a great time. Things like that are happening. So it's not so prevalent. But now in this space, one-on-one and in this season, it's like, oh, wow. I didn't know this. How do we equip a caregiver who is coming to the season, and how do they navigate this? What things can they implement when, for example, when you talk about how the routine is broken, right? So things are going well, things are going okay, and then the routine is broken because things are changing rapidly. How do you, as a caregiver, what are some of the things we can employ to help us? Because you mentioned something, keep kind of calm and regulated in that space, on top of the challenge of the caregiving itself.
Yeah, that, and to be fair, sometimes the challenges that creep up in those moments may not always afford you a lot of time to be able to think it out, plan it out, be able to like, okay, I need to do this and do this and do that, where you have some free time. Sometimes it's like impulse, like I'm just on the fly coming up with what I need to do next. Yeah. So in those moments where the structure, the routine is broken, where we're into this new season, as you said, or this, like, okay, this is a serious challenge that's happening. The first thing I would say, as a woman of faith, stop and pray.
Yes.
Stop and pray. Because sometimes we're human beings. We get upset. We get anxious. We get tired. We get stressed. We get pulled in so many directions. And sometimes our first natural response is frustration or anger, or fear. And when you're dealing with someone who is neurodivergent, you have to be able to, in those moments, pause and go, okay, God, this is bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Something is happening, and I need you to equip me with whatever grace and strength and patience in this moment so that I can love the person that I'm dealing with from a space of compassion and care because you love them.
Yes.
And the last thing I need them to see is an angry face or a frustrated face or an impatient face, because I don't like how they're acting or how it is inconveniencing me in this moment.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
sometimes that is, like I said, we're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And we have feelings, and our feelings, deserve to be heard and be valid. But when you are in a position where you're having to care for someone who is neurodivergent, whether it's an elderly person or a young person,
Mm-hmm.
where things just went topsy-turvy,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I would tell you to do, especially if you're a person of faith, is stop and pray. It don't have to be no long drawn out prayer. Just, God, give me the strength and the wisdom I need in this moment.
Wow.
The second thing I would tell you to do is just, if you need like a mental health check-in for yourself, where am I?
Yes.
Take a deep breath. Center yourself.
Mm.
You can do this. If you need help, where emergent help is needed, call it. This is why we have 911 if it is a 911 situation. If it is, I need some support,
Mm-hmm.
friend, brother, sister, neighbor, whoever it is, can someone just come here and be with me for just a few minutes?
Mm-hmm.
If time, sometimes we need to be able to pull out your ACE card. Who is that person? That's your ACE card that you can call in those moments. Because sometimes in your brains, if you're a person who, when something like this goes south in for you, and all of us have like an anxiety, that kind of fight or flight, we all have it. Some of us pause and get paralyzed in the moment where we don't know what to think. We don't know what to do. We don't know where to go.
Right.
Again, stop and pray.
Mm. Wow. That's
Take a deep breath. You can do this.
Mm-hmm.
God wouldn't have put you in this situation if he didn't trust that you knew how to do what was going to happen. So anything that sorry, I don't mean to go off on a rant tangent, but
no, this is so good.
Anytime, God puts you in a situation where, okay, things are not exactly the way I need them to be. How have you gotten through challenges before?
Yes.
Just because there is a roadblock doesn't mean you can't get to your destination. You might have to take a detour. The detour might take us a little bit longer. Same thing with our GPS systems when we're trying to get from one place to another and we don't turn where it says turn. What does it do? Reroute.
That's right.
That's what you're going to do in this situation. You're just rerouting. Rerouting might take you a few minutes. It might take you a whole month. Rerouting might take you a whole year, depending on the level of what that challenge or problem is. But do know that you are not alone. Call in hard if you need it. And then think in this situation, what is the safest thing? How do I keep this person safe and keep myself safe?
Woo, that's so good. Oh my gosh, Janet. You said a lot. You said a lot of things. My mind's just going off in all different directions. So my goodness, some of the things I heard, self-regulation is key.
Mm-hmm.
Check in with yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
Community.
Mm-hmm.
You're not an island. Establish a community of people that you can reach out to for different things, for those emergencies, or, somebody to, talk you off the ledge, like right then, who can come and so that you can step away for a minute, a trusted person, family member, neighbor, someone. I heard you talking about, we can't wait until we get to this season to begin to develop character traits in ourselves that make us equipped for this, right? When we come to this season, God knows that we were going to come to it.
Yeah.
We might not have. However, there have been other indications in our lives that you need to work on that. You need to work on your patience a little bit more. And there are different scenarios that you have been in throughout your life, no matter how young or old you are, where there was an opportunity to develop some of these traits that if you did so, if you took the prompt, if you recognized the prompting, that when you got to this space, you still have to do the work, but it wouldn't be the lion's share in every area. There might be some areas like, oh man, I got to tweak that. I got to work on that. Just the constant development that we need to be doing in our lives, because we don't know when we're going to be called to a role such as this as a caregiver. We don't know when. A lot of people are not wired for this. But I also heard you say there are others who are built for this. Yeah. So, yeah, so much. Oh my gosh. So good. You know, what about, do you think it's possible to find actually fulfillment and times of joy in this type of caregiving scenario?
Yes, I do. Sometimes it doesn't always seem as obvious. I think often when you've been doing it for a long time, you can become resentful and be like, why me? Like, what is going on? And, I didn't sign up for this. But there is a joy in seeing neurodivergent people thrive and just authentically be who God created them to be. And it is being able to see the spectrum of all of the beautiful people that God put in this world. And just because they don't operate on the same wavelength or, way you're used to seeing them, doesn't mean they don't have something to contribute, doesn't mean that they don't have something to be able to aspire to. I mean, I see my son, and with all of his handicaps and deficits, like you can't help but be happy when you're around him because he's just so bubbly. He's just always so joyful over little things. I'm like, son, none of this really, okay, I don't care. You know what I mean? But for him, it is his world. Yeah. And so it causes me to really appreciate and be grateful that, you know what, I'm going to go Bible here just for a hot second.
No apologies.
Come to him like a child.
Yes.
That is a child's faith and joy is so genuine. They don't have to put on a fake face or anything. They're just there. Yeah. And they are just open like that. Neurodivergent people, depending on who you're dealing with though, or the way their neurodivergence takes shape. Sometimes there's a joy there in their personality. There is a uniqueness in how they see music, art, fascination with historic events and details. I'm like, they have memories they can come up with all kinds of stuff, but give them a script and say, okay, you need to do this. They might get a little bit lost and sidetracked in that. But I think if you are willing to just stop, take a step back and observe them for the beauty of who they are, they're just them being image bearers of God and what they bring into humanity and why God placed them in your life to begin with. Sometimes I feel like we buff at like these people in our lives, like they just drive us crazy. Okay, yes, that may be, but what is their purpose for being there with you to begin with? And as the caregiver, neurodivergent or not, what is God saying to you about this person in your life? What is your assignment to them? And when you start thinking about what your assignment is to them, and how God put you there to be used for their help and betterment, I think it changes your thought processing. And okay, this is why I'm caring for you. This is why I need to do the things that I do. And I think it causes you to have that level of patience and endurance in a way that you probably wouldn't otherwise have. And why you can, okay, I need to reroute. I need to pivot. Okay, we had a moment where everything got derailed. All right, derailing happens. It happens. But if this is my assignment, then God will equip you to get through whatever that derailment is.
Oh my gosh. So good. I was hearing, are we being a good steward of those people who God has put in our lives for the reasons that He knows? And how everybody is woven into the fabric of our lives, and recognizing the value, to your point, the imago Dei, the image of God that every person has, whether they believe in God or not. We're made in His image, everyone. And it's just so powerful. It's so powerful, to your point, when you look at it that way, right? And not looking at it as a hardship or a burden or, the why me kind of a thing, that God put in that caregiver everything that caregiver was going to need for this, to care for this person. God did that. And so, I mean, it's just so, it feels like purposeful. Like when we think about our lives, the purpose for our lives and all through our lives. And some things are seasonal, but there's the connectedness to everything that God intended for us. My goodness, this is really good. Before we kind of wrap up, I wanted to just focus maybe briefly on how does everything that we've talked about, is there anything that we would approach differently if both parties were divergent? If both of them had challenges in the same area, would anything that we've talked about, would we approach it different in any way?
Possibly, yes. And that is because when you have both parties that are neurodivergent, counsel is important. So in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. Plans fail for lack of knowledge. The vision doesn't go forth because there's that knowledge base is not there. So in order for it to succeed, you have to bring somebody in outside of you to help you navigate the process. So for the caregiver who is neurodivergent, having those mental check-ins, where am I as the caregiving person? How do I set myself up for success so that I can give to the person I'm caring for who's neurodivergent the way they need to be given to. So utilizing resources that maybe you were at first, like we talked about earlier, when you were opposed to maybe utilizing those resources, you might need to call in some of those resources. So whether that is working with your therapist more, or talking to your doctor about your own, physical health and condition, making sure you're taking care of yourself, becoming a little more organized. So let's say you're not, necessarily taking any medications for anything, but giving yourself time blocks, giving yourself like a set schedule for you. Like, what does your schedule need to look like so that you can execute on the schedule that you need to do for the person that you're caring for who's neurodivergent. So you do have to be willing to do the work of what it means. How do I get me organized as a caregiver? Because I can't help them if I don't help me.
Right.
So that part just becomes it's a must. Because you're no good to the person you're trying to care for when you don't take care of yourself. So I think using those outside resources that you need, utilize that. So you can give the care to the person who is also neurodivergent. So when you have a set schedule, it helps you to be able to plan and organize the schedule for the person you're caring for, knowing how they best need to communicate. So for some of my older patients and even younger patients, if visual is where they are, create a visual schedule that they can always see. Get a whiteboard or a grease board. At 8 o'clock, we do this. At 10 o'clock, we do this. At 11 o'clock, we do this. So that it gives them a script of what they need to follow. So, and then for yourself as a neurodivergent caregiver, depending on, again, the spectrum, where you fall on that spectrum, giving yourself what you need so that you can continue to care. If you're a neurodivergent person that does not have the capacity to care for someone who's neurodivergent, okay, who else outside of you? Where is the support? So that everybody is getting what they need. And cases like that, they do happen, where you have like children, older children, adult children with disabilities or neurodivergence, but their parents have disabilities. Sometimes it's not always compatible where you can care for them. Right. So you may have to make sure social services are involved. There may have to be, a neighbor, a friend, or another family member who is involved, because, you have two people here with neurodivergent needs that might need more than themselves because they just don't have capacity. And it happens quite a lot.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because we've been talking about this from the perspective of both caregivers and the elderly loved one or the loved one being cared for as highly functioning to be able to do this, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, what happens when they might not be so highly functioning to maintain schedules and structure and strategies, and how would, I guess, I'm wondering, because of the challenges that a neurodivergent person may have, who might not be as highly functioning as kind of we've been talking about up to this point, would they have the wherewithal to know I need to call in help? How does that, what does that look like? And I want to wrap with that, and then, maybe some encouragement that you can share with our caregivers who might be in this exact scenario.
Yeah. When you have both parties that may be lower functioning, often social services is already involved. So, for example, if you have a a person who has Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
But the mother that had been caring for them, and the child is now an adult, the mother is now like in their 70s or 80s, and they need support, but their daughter or son has Down syndrome and just does not have that capacity to help them. Somewhere along the line, whether they are on adults with DDD or adults with disability services, all tech services, that's what we call it here, which is our version of Arizona long-term care. They get disability, they get, sometimes they get food assistance or housing assistance where they may need to be in a group home setting or something like that. Social services does get involved pretty quickly when something like this happens. And often the way we find out is they show up in the ER.
God. Oh,
now, whether it's malnourished or neglect or illness of some sort, they show up in the ER. And then when they do finally figure out like, oh, the person caring for them has early stage dementia. So these are not compatible situations.
Right.
So, when that happens, in those more severe cases, social services usually gets involved, or they've been involved for a while. And so making sure that those individuals have support is important. And I've seen that happen where the loved one, the child is in group home care, and then the elderly person, as they get older, they end up in long-term care somewhere.
Wow.
So I mean, I hate to see that, but there are cases where that happens, especially when there's no other surviving relative or comes in and help provide that care. And so I encourage all of us neurodivergent individuals, or those of us caring for neurodivergence, whether we have it or not, again, know that you are not alone. Know that God loves you and he sees you in this time and season, and knew you would be in this time and season. So if you are a person of faith, don't think God doesn't see you and doesn't hear you. He does. And he has given you grace with each day to meet the challenge.
That's awesome. One of the things when we really started talking about doing this podcast on these segments, and you just kind of were just giving me information that I had, never had access to or looked into, like dug deeper into it. And some of the things you were saying made me think this. Now you correct me if I'm wrong, but these were my thoughts, that because the spectrum of neurodivergence is so great, is it possible that everybody is actually on the spectrum in some capacity? Or no, that's just not how this works? I'm thinking about people's quirkiness. You have quirk, you have different things that you do, and other people would say, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And it's just something you've done. It might have been environmental, it might have been just tradition, whatever it is, or just we all come to things with our own perspectives. And because of that, I guess I'm wondering, who determines what is quote unquote within the realm of
neurodivergence.
Yes. I just was thinking about that. I was like, well, okay, that's fine, but who's making these determinations and what is it based on? Is that a legitimate question, Janet?
I think it is, because as individuals, we are unique in and to ourselves. We are the building blocks, of course, of our parents' DNA. But even with that, your fingerprint is uniquely different. Your eye print is uniquely different. Your toe print is uniquely different. I might look like my mother and my father, but they are separate individuals from me. And so their quirkiness and my quirkiness, there might be some overlaps and little things that we might do that are similar.
Yes.
And I think that just, is kind of something that I think happens just across humanity, no matter what race or ethnic group you or nationality you come from. There are just some people that have these little weird things that they do, and this is just their normal. But is it considered a neurodivergence? I think that's a question for a larger research study to extrapolate on what is classified. Can that classification for neurodivergence actually be extended into varying personality traits, or why some people are A-type personality and why others might be B-types of personality? Why some people may be, go-getters, where other people's like just fear talking to people on stage. They don't want to get up. They don't want to be seen. They're very much in the shadows. And so, I think that's a great question that probably deserves a bit more research study to figure out what really is new, because on the surface, all of us are likely neurodivergent.
That's my point. That's my point in some way, but this has been a delight. Thank you so much. I have really appreciated, and we really wanted to do this segment for lots of different reasons. And I think in our discussion, we talked about how just been encountering people who are really struggling with this. And so I was like, wow, let's talk about it. Let's get something out there to perhaps help and address this for caregivers specifically. So thank you so much. And let the audience know what you might be working on next, how they can join you, how they can connect with you. And we'd love to connect you.
Yeah, thank you for having me and for just allowing me to share. So I do appreciate that. My practice is Samaritan Psychiatry and Wellness, and we are on the web. So if you Google me, you'll find me, Samaritan Psychiatry and A&D, all spelled out, and Wellness. We are located in downtown Scottsdale, Arizona. And we are a practice of 3 providers, myself and 2 other nurse practitioners who are quite exceptionally amazing providers. They love working with all sorts of people, so I appreciate them so very much. We have an excellent staff that works with us, and so we're looking forward and exciting to see you. What comes up for me, or things coming up the pipe for me, I am endeavoring with God's will to start and finish my PhD in nursing. So that is a passion of mine. So my PhD is in nursing with the emphasis in healthcare education, because I do enjoy teaching. I am a preceptor for several schools, so I still teach nurse practitioner students all the time. And in the future, just watch out. We are branching or launching a primary care practice within Samaritan Psychiatry. So we're going to start a primary care arm in our practice that has a specific niche for neurodivergence. So the population target that we're looking at is really trying to focus on those adults with autism spectrum disorder. So y'all heard me say before about autistic son, but that is coming down the pike for us. So just please be in prayer for us. We are endeavoring to continue to build our community and just help those in need. Where God gives us hands and feet to go, that's where we go.
Well, that is wonderful. You got a lot on your plate. And again, thank you for your time and just pouring into my caregivers this way.